Yes.
My presentation is on sustainable smart cities in the modern world. First of all, what is a smart city? A good general definition by Rosa D'Angelico, a professor of computer science at the University of Rome, states that being a smart city means using all available technologies and resources in an intelligent and coordinated manner to develop urban centers that are once integrated, habitable, and sustainable. My research question is, should smart cities be built throughout the world as a way to combat the international problems of overpopulation and climate change? Let's start with overpopulation. According to our first year material, The Urban Transformation of the Developing World, from 2000 to 2024, the world's population is expected to grow by 1.76 billion people, with 86% of this growth occurring in cities and towns of developing countries which are, and I quote, less well provided with basic services such as improved sanitation and adequate drinking water. According to the Internet of Things, a technology developer, smart cities can help to solve this problem by utilizing smart housing and smart transportation, which can not only house more people, but also reduce congestion on streets. Let's move on to climate change. The issue of climate change is best described by another one of our standings materials when Margaret Thatcher, former British Prime Minister, states, put into bluntest form, the main threat to our environment is more and more people and their activities. The World Economic Forum describes how smart cities can use solutions like smart grids to deliver energy more efficiently to homes and buildings, and also provide a vital opening for the use of renewable energy resources. So, if smart cities are so incredible, then what is holding them back? That brings us to our problem, which is the extreme initial cost of smart cities holds them back from being built and spread around the world. According to the experts at Smart America Challenge, a presidential innovation project, cities around the world will need to invest around $41 trillion to upgrade their infrastructure and benefit from the network of connected devices known as the Internet of Things. My first solution is to implement a carbon tax and use the money gained to fund the development and construction of smart cities. Republican Representative John B. Larson first proposed a carbon tax bill in 2007 that included a first-year rate of $15 per ton of CO2 released, which would then increase by $10 per ton each year. According to the Carbon Tax Center, that $15 per ton in the first year would generate around $88 billion of revenue for the U.S. government, which would then increase to over $440 billion by the end of the 10th year. Deloitte, a business consulting agency, has put a price tag of $150 billion on India's vision of creating 100 smart cities by the end of 2022, meaning about $1.5 billion per city. With the funding from the carbon tax, the U.S. could afford to pay for 52 smart cities within just the first year, and up to 290 smart cities each year by the end of the 10th year. The pros of this solution are that it would be easy to implement, there would be a natural 20% decrease in the use of petroleum, and once the cities are built, the tax would obviously be much lower as the cities use a lot less CO2. The cons of this solution are that there would be citizen resistance, and there would be an overwhelming amount of people suddenly switching over to renewable energy resources, which cannot sustain that amount of people at this time. The implications of this solution would be to make it a federal tax and to simply add the price on to every CO2 emitting product and service, and also to enforce it in industrial buildings. The limitations of this solution would obviously be the citizen and industrial resistance, and also measuring the amount of CO2 released by each person or building. My second solution is to have large tech companies fund the development and construction of smart cities. According to Cree Tech, a real estate technology company, Bill Gates has already invested $80 million in a smart city in Belmont, Arizona. This 24,800-acre development will be located just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and filled with residences, schools, work and retail spaces, high-speed digital network, self-driving cars, and high-tech manufacturing centers. Many companies around the world are doing something similar, such as Google, who has invested $50 million in a smart city in Toronto, Canada. This solution obviously requires a huge investment from the technology companies, but according to a study done by Management Science, for every dollar spent or invested in smart cities, as much as $2.49 can be seen in return. Therefore, if a company were to spend $1 million on a smart city, they could see as much as $2.5 million in return. The pros of this solution are that the cities would be built much faster, the projects could start much sooner, and the cities would be much more secure as they'd be built on a smaller scale. The cons of this solution are that the companies could take advantage of the cities with constant advertising. These companies have a limited budget, meaning only a few small cities, and the cities could lack a sense of place, authenticity, and distinctiveness. The implications of this solution would likely involve a collaboration between the private and public sector to fund and run the development of the smart cities. The limitations of this solution are that most cities would just be experimental for testing the products of the company, and also there are few companies who could fund such a project as this. So in conclusion, Solution 1 would be a much more viable option to solve the problem of funding the building and development of smart cities. This solution allows hundreds of smart cities to be built each year, whereas private companies can only build a few small smart cities. Also, having the money from the taxpayer for the cities would allow them to create a sense of uniqueness and authenticity with different builders building the cities, whereas the privately built cities would likely be very uniform and very similar. Lastly, having the government build the cities would allow me to use a wide variety of the best technologies, whereas privately built companies would obviously favor their own products, which might not be the best in their own area. So Solution 1 is a better option than Solution 2, but according to a study done by Information Age, which is a technology-based newspaper, a collaboration between the private and public sector would mean a greater cost efficiency and expertise for the public sector and more business for the private sector, making it a win-win scenario and likely the best option for smart cities. To end, smart cities are the future and can help to solve many of the world's global environmental crises. All they need is funding, which can come from both the private and public sectors. Thank you.
So, thank you, Kaden. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process? And did your research go in a different direction than you originally planned?
It definitely did, because when I first started researching, I was just looking into mainly the problems of overpopulation and climate change. I didn't even think of smart cities. And while I was researching that and researching for solutions to that, I found smart cities through that. And then I decided to change my focus onto the smart cities themselves rather than just focusing on overpopulation and climate change.
Okay. And then how did you use the conclusions and questions of others to advance your own research?
Many of the conclusions I saw before in some people's papers were not really concrete solutions, and I didn't think that those would be very viable. So I decided in my work to make sure that I have really concrete solutions like actual laws or actual developments that that are concrete and real rather than just figurative.
Okay, thank you.